Hello, peoples. Greetings from the edge of the, what is it called? Typhoon. We're just on the edge over here, and it's not that bad. But the power did go out about 2 hours ago, so maybe you'll suddenly lose connection. But we'll see. So we're continuing chapter 9. Which is about Rashipala, which means rising sign effects. We finished chapter 8, which was, what was it called? Bhava something Pala, which is the effect of planets and houses. And I think that you're not going to find in Phaladipika planets and signs, unfortunately. But who knows? We might find it tucked away in some nook. But the rising sign stuff is very interesting and informative about the sign itself. We did the first text last week, which was Aries. And now we're moving on to the second text, which is Taurus. Good. So let's do it. Prituru Vaktra Krishi Karma Kritsyan Madhyanta Sokya Parama Priyascha Syagi Kshani Klesha Sahascha Goman Prishtasya Pashvernka Yuto Vrishota. So what does that mean? Prituru Vaktra means that the hips and the face are Pritu. You guys from Bhagavatam stream remember Pritu. Pritu was a king of the whole earth. So he's called Pritu because his kingdom and his personality and his mind was broad. The earth itself is called Prithvi because it's huge. So Prithu means big and broad and wide. And Uru is the hips and the thighs. So we're talking about big hips, broad hips. And also Vaktra. Vaktra is the face and also the facial features. So broad face means that it's not like this one. It's not narrow. It's bigger, rounded. So it will be smaller on the bottom, bigger in the middle, smaller in the top. Does that, anybody who, I don't know, does that make sense to any of you? That particular shape, those particular characteristics, and how that would relate to Taurus, why that would come from Taurus. It makes perfect sense. It's very, very simple. But we'll see if you guys can think of what it is. We'll go into each one in more detail. I have notes on each one in a second. Nathaniel wants to know if there's a pattern for rising signs. It seems to be, let's see, we're only 2 in, but it seems to be a very simple pattern. That signs owned by malefic rising signs are a little tougher, and the signs the signs owned by malefic planets are a little tougher, and the signs owned by benefic planets are a little gentler. We'll see. Okay, so that's the first word, Prituru, Vaktra, and Krishi Karmakrit. Krishi Karmakrit means you work in agriculture. Your krita, or your work, is Krishi Karma, agricultural. Does that make any sense with Taurus? You ever wonder why it's a bull? Why did people pick a bull to symbolize Taurus? This is a big part of the reason. Krishi Karma Syan. The word Syan is always interesting. You always have to bear in mind that it's should be. You can never say this will make this effect, because you only look at one thing at a time. So the rising sign is giving these possibilities to the chart. Then the third term is Madhyanta Sokya, which means happy. Sukhi has happiness in Madhya and Antya, in the middle and the end. That's weird. That's interesting. It actually means something very specific. There's some people on the stream who did the Bhagavad Gita with me, and I'm giving you the hint that it should make sense to you based on what you know about Bhagavad Gita and the Triguna, the three modes of nature. And then the fourth thing he says is Pramada Apriya. Praturu Vaktra Krishi Karma Kritsyan Madhyanta Sokya Pramada Priyascha. So one thing that this means, or one way to read this, is they really love pramada. And what's pramada? Pramada means romance. So they really love beauty, lovable things, romance. The other way to read this that just dawned on me is they're very romantic. So it's basically the same thing. They're very romantic people. Pramada apriya means they're priya. They're apriya. The way that they give love is pramada. Very forceful. Okay, we'll look at each one in a second. Does that make any sense with Taurus? You should be asking yourself questions. Why Taurus? Then the third line begins with 3 personality traits. I guess Praturu Vaktra is a physical trait. Krishi Karma Krit is career. Madhyanta Sokya is a psychology trait. Pramada Priyas is a psychology trait. And then these next 3 are character traits. So Syagi, Kshami, and Kleshasaha. This, by the way, Kleshasaha is very similar to that kind of head-scratching moment that we had with Jupiter in the 5th house and Venus in the 7th. He's bringing up the same thing here. He's phrasing things in the same way. It's clarifying the way he's using his phraseology. Jupiter in the 5th house was like, it sounds like it might mean trouble with children, and that's why you have all these people making pretzels and figuring out loopholes to explain why Jupiter, the planet of children, would be negative for children in the house of children. It doesn't make any sense. But they'll bend over backwards to make it make sense. But actually, it doesn't make sense. That's not the meaning of the phrase. Klesha Saha means they take troubles. It's the same thing with Jupiter in the 5th house. Putra Klesha Saha means that they give themselves troubles for their kids. They take trouble for their kids. They care about their kids. They sacrifice for the kids. So that's also just the basic nature of Taurus. It would be kind of interesting to have Jupiter in the 5th house with Taurus rising. Taurus has the same nature. It's Kleshasaha. It's not just towards kids, though, but it likes to take troubles. We'll talk more about what that means. Let's just review the words right now. Kshami means a couple of things. It basically means tolerant. I like that better than forgiving. Tolerant, or you can say forgiving, or patient even, which is very interesting. There's this weird, I think, American or maybe European myth about Taurus, which is kind of contrary to this description. And if you want, I can give you my point of view on how that myth arises. Syagi. Syagi means they like to give presents. They are generous. So we got Prituru Vaktra, they have big hips and a round face. Krishi Karma Kritsyan, they work in agriculture. Madhyanta Sokya, they're happy in the middle and at the end, which means they're not so happy at the beginning. Or their pleasure. Their pleasure is not sought at the beginning. This is a better way to say it, not really happy in the middle and end, but they find pleasure in the middle and the end of things, not at the beginning. Pramadapriyasya, they love a lot and they really love loving. And they love beauty and they love romance. Syagi Kshami Kleshasahas, they're tolerant, they're generous, and they take troubles for people. And another thing is Gomang. Literally, Gomang means they have cows. But what it actually means is they have money. They have wealth. So they're wealthy. Prishtasya Pashveranka Nyuto. They have beauty marks. And the words there seem to be more words than necessary here to describe beauty marks. Prishtasya Pashveranka Nyuto. So I've seen some translators talk about where the beauty marks are placed, saying that it's prishti in the back. But then the word for beauty mark is also prishta. So and then the final word is vrishota, which happened to have a typo in my edition of it, which was prishtota, which maybe isn't a typo, but I can't imagine. I couldn't find in any dictionaries or anything Prishta relating to Taurus, but Vrisha is Taurus, Vrishota, Taurus rising. All right, so that's the overview. The overview is if Taurus rises, expect broad hips and face, engagement in agriculture, finding pleasure in the middle and end of things. If Taurus rises, expect broad hips and face, engagement in agriculture, finding pleasure in the middle and end of things, being very motivated by beauty and romance, being generous, tolerant, and taking troubles, having wealth, and having beauty marks. Well, let's look at each one of these separately. But let me see if you guys had any guesses about why these things are attributed to Taurus. Krista wants to know if Taurus is benefic in Vedic astrology because they consider cows holy. That would be reverse engineering. The symbol for a sign is given to describe the sign, like a name is given to a person to describe the person. The name doesn't create the person. Similarly, the symbols of the zodiac signs don't create the meaning of the signs. The symbols of the zodiac signs were people's way of expressing or encapsulating what the meaning is. The reason why Taurus is benefic is because it belongs to Venus and is additionally made of a benefic element, which is Earth. Crystal's confirming the hips, the big hips. We have Io says she's on the Prithu story now. Well, Judith delivered 6 children naturally as a Taurus. This is what is Krishi Karma Krit. This is what we'll get into when we talk about Krishi Karma Krit. Taurus, Imadaloops is the Taurus field. I don't even know what that is. But it's not the reason. Dr. Architect, let's say you're a different ascendant, but the ascendant lord is sitting in Taurus or aspecting the ascendant cusp like Saturn. If you got something in Taurus, then you'll have effects of Taurus. I mean, what he's explaining is effects of Taurus on the ascendant. So you won't have identical effects when Taurus is somewhere else, or when something else is in Taurus, but you'll have similar things working with that thing that's in Taurus. So Moon in Taurus is not terribly different than Taurus rising, nor Jupiter or Venus in Taurus. Very good, Aya. Yes, Nathaniel, good thinking. See, this is how you can answer every question. When I say, why is this ascribed to Taurus, you guys might think because it starts with the letter T, and this also starts with the letter T, or because it has Taurus. It has 6 letters, and 6 in Hebrew. You don't have to go like that. You don't have to do that kind of stuff. You have to stick to the basic stuff, and that explains everything. Taurus is ruled by Venus. It's made out of earth. Bam, that's going to explain everything. You need anything else explained? It's fixed. It's not cardinal or dual. It's fixed. That explains everything. So Nathaniel says Taurus is ruled by Venus, and Venus is a significator of love. So romance makes sense. That's where the Pramada Apriya. But it's a little bit more than that. It's not just Venus, but it's Venus's combination with Earth. Because Earth is fertile. And that's what Pramada implies. Not romance is a rated PG word for it. Excuse me. That was horrific. All right. Let's take a look at these things in more detail. So the first point was Praturu Vaktra, which means broad hips and a round face. So what is that? What is that shape? That's a female shape. That's the basic way that you can identify. Men big on top, women big on the bottom. So what he's saying about Taurus is big on the bottom. And also when it comes to the face, men big on the bottom, women small on the bottom. So if you have a round face, it's small on the bottom. If you have a square face, it's big on the bottom. So male shape is square face and upside down triangle. Female shape is round face and triangle. And what he's saying about Taurus is round face and triangle. Now that makes sense because Taurus is uber feminine. Taurus is very feminine because the ruler is Venus. The element is earth, which is feminine. Earth and water are feminine. And the mode is fixed. That's feminine. The cardinal mode is male. The fixed mode is female. And the dual mode is cross. So if you put Taurus, if you put the ascendant in Taurus, if you put Taurus on the rising sign, what does the ascendant signify? The body. So it couldn't be a more 2 + 2 = 4 thing. You shouldn't have to go out and think about Taurus has 18 letters and so does Einstein. So Einstein's theory should explain why Taurus is actually made of Rohini, and that's because something Dr. Arjun Pai said. You don't have to do all that stuff. It's just here's a super feminine sign on the ascendant, which signifies the body. So let's try to unpack it now. Not just unpacking the thought process behind it, but also what is the implication of it. So it directly implies that you'll have more kapha, because that's what makes a triangle with a circle on top. There's 3 Ayurvedic or Vedic health, Vedic biology is based on this 3 components of the body. The circulatory component, the metabolistic component, and the structural component. The structural component, the fatty component, is called kapha. And the metabolistic component is called pitta. And the circulatory component is called vata. You get Praturu Vaktra if you have kapha. Venus is dominantly kapha, and Earth is entirely kapha. And the fixed sign is very heavy. A fixed sign is very heavy. So Taurus is very kapha. That's why somebody in the comments says, nah, they're supposed to be attractive, but they're too fat or something. They're too stocky. Well, I personally disagree, but it's not going to be skinny, twiggy, bony models that you see on the magazines. They're like, I don't know, those weird pictures in the windows of those department stores. That's not Taurian look. That's not a Taurian look. I agree. So if your flavor is for that, then you'll be a little bit like, I don't know, I'm not that interested in the Taurus look. Okay, so what Taurus does is it enhances the kapha. What kapha does, by the way, is it puts down the pitta. And the pitta is metabolism, and that's associated with acidity and the acidic hormone, which is the testosterone. This is why men have quick metabolism and eat more and have more muscle. So the way that Taurus achieves Prituru biologically speaking, is because it increases kapha. So it's important to understand that, so that you can know it's not just the big hips and a round face. You can know the other parts of the interpretation that are important. This person has a lot of kapha. In other words, they have a lot of structure to them. They probably don't have a lot of metabolism. They probably don't have a lot of pitta or vata. So they can become imbalanced easily towards vata, and they need to be careful to maintain their pitta. If you know about Ayurveda a little bit, then that kind of stuff makes sense. This is why it's important when you do astrology. It's important to not just be an astrology head, but to learn all the classical sciences. All right. The other thing that you should know about kapha is, out of the three components, the most important one for being healthy is kapha. Of course, they're all important for being healthy, but it's very easy to have too much wind, too much circulation. It'll dry you out right away, and then your body will screw up. It's very easy to have too much pitta or too much acidity, because especially in today's world where we're very active and we don't sleep well and we're stressed out. And when you have that, then you burn holes in all of your tissue. And so those two things, they wear the body out really fast. Vata, especially pitta, is number 2. Kapha preserves the body. It is the body. It's the physical part of the body. So the third thing that you should understand about Prituru Vaktra, it means these people, they have a sturdier health. They have more sturdy health. And then I have a note here. It's not like you should expect a Taurus rising male to have an hourglass figure. You remember chapter 6, I believe it was, which was where he talked about, here's how you deal with yogas for people who are kings and born in royal families, which opened up our eyes to the fact that you have to think about who the interpretation pertains to. You don't, when you're doing astrology, you don't just think what's in the chart. You think who the chart belongs to. If it's a chart of a 4-year-old, you're not going to start talking about things that you would talk about if it's a chart of a 27-year-old. If it's a chart of a male, if it's a chart of a female, if it's a chart of a person who lives in Alaska, if it's a chart of a person who lives in Hawaii, it's different. It's different if you're reading it in 1592 versus if you're reading it in 2021 or 2. You read it differently. So that's also why it's important to not just know what it's written directly, but why it was written that way, why these people thought this way about Taurus rising, so that you have the ability to apply it in different circumstances. Having a lot of kapha in a male, yes, it will make the body broad. But it's not that it's anti-male or that it doesn't work with masculinity either. Men look good when they're broad too. Especially because men like to look big, need to look big. And Taurus makes people look big. Okay, and then there's another note. Another thing about Vaktra is it's not just a round face, but Vaktra, the word, can also mean your mouth, your nose. It can mean the whole face or the parts of the face. So the other thing about femininity is because the face is smaller and rounder, the mouth appears a lot bigger and the eyes appear a lot bigger, and the nose is a little bit more noticeable. So that's also enhanced by the Taurian ascendant. The Taurus ascendant will make the face rounder, but that also means like it will make the eyes bigger, it will make the mouth, lips bigger, it will make, you know what I mean? Maybe the nose might be bigger, more defined. So you understand the effect of Taurus on the ascendant? Let me check and see if you have any questions. Thriller says, I don't understand how it's a Venus sign. I mean, I know that you're just complaining about your preferences for looks, but you could, if you actually want to know why it's a Venus sign, you could find out in my series that I did, Is Astrology Beautiful? Which you could do if you click over to my channel page, and you find that playlist is on the top of my main page. I'm not going to answer people's questions about their charts, but yeah, if Taurus rising, then that means that Venus is the ruler of the first house, so that means that Venus is the predominant ruler. So some people say Venus is the chart lord. Yeah, Scorpio is also water, and so people are complaining about which type of beauty do you like better, Taurus beauty or Scorpio beauty? It depends on what you're attracted to. I mean, everybody's different. Why just accept that people have different tastes? And that can also be explained through the position of the planets. But if you like the kind of beauty which is sturdy and enduring and stable and not very wild, actually, then you'll be attracted to the Taurian shape. But if you like the beauty that's more dangerous and risky and makes your feelings go out of control, then you'll be attracted to the Scorpio shape. Because Scorpio is about fire and water mixing in one place. Mars ruling Scorpio. And it's also very feminine, but it's got that weird dichotomy of having a very masculine ruler. But it's very feminine because it has water and it's fixed. Okay, so let's go and look at the next thing. That's about how Taurus affects the body. It should always have something about how it affects the body. What did it say with Aries? Not that much, just a bruised body. A bruised body and very physically oriented uses their eyes. So, you might want to add that into his description of Aries. He kind of left it out. Aries is muscular and thin and high metabolism. All right, now the next thing they just said was Krishi Karma Crit. How does that make any sense? And this is why Taurus is symbolized by a bull. Because bulls symbolize fertility, first of all, and bulls symbolize agriculture. And agriculture and fertility are the same thing. Even the word for agriculture, Krishi, means attraction. So the reason why Krishi means agriculture and Krishi also means attraction. Krishi is the word for Krishna. Krishi means to pull something. When you do farming, that's what you do most of the time. You're either pulling or sticking stuff in. Pulling, putting stuff in, pulling, putting stuff in. So is that not very sexual? That's very pull in, put in, attract, impregnate. That's Taurus. That's Krishi. I mean, that's not Taurus. That's Krishi. I'm explaining Krishi. So Krishi is agriculture. It's pulling things and then planting seeds. Pulling a plow, planting a seed. And then Krishi is attraction. Because it means pulling things means you pull things towards you. Attract. So agriculture is basically the same as fertility. especially if you consider the Vedic paradigm, the Upanishadic, the Vedantic paradigm is that the body is a field, kshetra. It's a field, and a field, like a farm field, and a field can produce things. Vegetables, those are children. Veggie kids, Cabbage Patch Kids, and so this is the whole thing in the classical mind, the way the wordings, the way our mind is structured, because we are all the way that we grew up is based on the classical culture that transmuted into our modern culture. Krishi earth, making things grow, that equals making babies. So there's two things going on side by side here with this Krishi Karma Krit. What it really means is this person deals with fertility. This person deals with production. So that means a lot of creativity. This is the other thing. Fertility means sexuality and fertility, and that also means production, reproduction, and that means production, creativity. So artists, that's why you put these people go together. Artists, sensualists, people who like to eat, people who make food. They're in the same nakama. They're in the same little family. So Taurus being Krishi Karma Krit, it's promoting those types of people that are productive, fertile. So artists, creative people, literally fertile people, like many of the people in the comments were saying, oh, I had 6 kids naturally, I have no labor pains, blah, blah, blah. Indeed, they will likely deal with gardening or farming, at least as a recreation, since farming is less available as a career in the modern world. So again, like, you have to tailor the interpretation to the reality of what's in front of you. Like I was saying before about kings or not kings, etc. If you want to say Krishi Karma Krit means you're a farmer, how many people are farmers these days? There's not that many. There's not that much opportunity to do farming. Why? Because all the machines took over all the jobs. So it's not likely that you're going to be accurate if you say you're a farmer, even though if you took that same exact person back 300 years ago, they would probably be a farmer. But now they're a computer programmer instead. So don't just get stuck on the actual description of it, but understand the reasoning behind why that description is there, and then you can modify it to suit the circumstances that you're interpreting for. But still, the Taurus person is the kind of person who likes to have plants around, likes to put their hand in the dirt, likes the touch of dirt. Okay, now let's talk about this Madhyanta Sokhya, happy in the middle end. So remember I said the people who did the Gita should be able to explain this? What do you think, Ari, Bardo, Alf, you're here. Usually we also have Vele. What's the deal there? So in the Gita, Krishna summarizes the Vedic comprehension of how people find pleasure. And it's based on the concept that there's 3 basic categories of psychology. One is sattvic, one is rajasic, one is tamasic. And the character of the sattvic, or clear, the character of the sattvic psychology is they take their pleasure in the end of things. And the characteristic of the rajasic seeker of pleasure is they take their pleasure at the beginning of things. So in other words, if you have something that's pleasant right now, the people who will jump for it will be the people that are rajasic psychologists. Their psychology is rajasic. They like things that are immediately fun. if you have something that takes a while you have to set it up, or you have to learn how to do it, etc. But it's really great. But it just takes a while to get it set up. The people that will gravitate towards that, those are the people who are sattvic in their mentality. The reason being is that the end lasts longer than the start. The start is momentary, but the end is eternal almost. When something is over, it's eternally over, usually, or it's over for quite a while. So people who prefer the end have a little bit of a clearer vision of reality than people who prefer the beginning. And then as far as the psychology goes for Tamagun, the place that they find pleasure, Krishna says, is nowhere. They just have an illusion of pleasure. But it could also be said that it's in the end, in the middle. So they find the pleasure in the work itself. So Taurus ascendant, what Taurus does by having all the earth and having Venus there, and femininity and the fixedness of it, it reduces Rajaguna. But it doesn't just increase Sattvaguna, because earth and fixed has some tamas to it. So, but Venus is Sattvic. Venus is the Brahmana. Venus and Jupiter are Sattvic. So Venus, the ruler, is the primary thing. It's increasing the sattva when something is in Taurus. But earth and fixed are making things heavier. So it increases the tamas. So overall you get a decrease in the third thing, which is rajas, and a rise of the other two, and sattva rises a bit more than tamas in the case of Taurus. So this is why he says their sokya, or their pleasure, is found anta and madhya, mostly at the end and also a bit in the middle, because it's not purely sattva. So what does it mean? It means, like, what does it mean in terms of how you understand a Taurus native? They're the kind of person who wants something that takes a while to get. So you're not going to find them changing their desires often, or changing their goals often. They know that their desires take a long time to fulfill. They know that their goals are for things that are far away. So they stick to it. And then this also affects how they get attracted to things. Like I said, people who are Rajasic, they get attracted to new things and new promises right away. But people who are Sattvic or Tamasic, they don't. People who are Tamasic, they don't get inspired by anything. But people who are Sattvic, they get attracted to things that have a long-lasting goodness and happiness to them. So they don't get attracted to things or averted from the things that they're already attracted to. Taurus ascendant. They stay attracted to things. And that means that they're good in marriage, they're good in family, they're good in relationships, they're good with responsibilities and duties to other people. Because they don't care if something is a bit uncomfortable or unpleasant for them right now. Their goal is for the long-term result. Make sense? That's what you should know about happy in the middle and end. So see, it's starting to make clear, right? If Taurus rises, expect broad hips and face, Praturu Vaktra, engagement in agriculture, which is Krishi Karma Krit, and finding pleasure in the middle and end of things, Madhyanta Sokya. Now, the third thing, Pramada Priya. Loves beauty and romance. So he puts this right after the Madhyanta Sokya. Because now it seems like Taurus is not passionate. Because Rajas means passion. Rajas means when you blush and you become red. So it means passion. When you get hot, when you get heated. That's Rajasic. So Taurus is not Rajasic, but Pramada Apriya. It does have a passionate quality to it. So even though it's Madhyanta Sokya, it's also Pramada Apriya. Even though it's not Rajasic, it's very compelled by romance and beauty. So take the two of them together. This means that Taurus has pramada and apriya, very strong feelings and passions and loves, but they're not fickle. It'll be difficult to attract a Taurus person who's not already attracted to you. So you may, if you're trying to attract the Taurus person's attention, you may think this person is uninterested. They're just uninterested in you because they're very interested in something else. So he's making that point now. They are very compelled by things that we identify as passions, but they don't have that passionate psychology. They have a sattvic mentality about passionate things. And this also means that they get very motivated by beautiful things. This reminds me of the game The Sims. Like, depending on the personality, the type that you set up, then you need to do different things. So they need to have art around them. They want to see beauty. They will feel sad if they don't. They'll get less motivated. They need to have things of beauty around. Good clothes, cosmetics. They need to have music. So they get motivated by the colors of things, the flavors of things, the shapes of things, etc. Does that make sense? It's clear? If not, if you have a real question that's on topic for me and not off topic, then maybe put 2 stars in front of it or something. So otherwise, you guys can just talk to each other, which is fine. My Taurus ascendant partners did not get tired of the sensuality of food. If you cook nice, they will worship you. My grandfather, my mom's dad, is such an example of Taurus. I don't know his ascendant, but he used to wear a Taurus necklace or something. Because he was born in this month of Taurus, so his sun was in Taurus, but I bet you he was born around sunrise. Because he is such an example of all of these things. And especially with the food, like you mentioned. Gloria, you said about that food. And not only that, but he himself knew how to cook. Well. Alright, now this next group of things. Syagi, Kshami, Kalesha, Saha. Generous, forgiving, and trouble-taking. So basically saying the same thing. Pramada Priya, but not just in a romantic way. The Taurus ascendant is loving in general. So they will want to be Syagi. Syagi means they like to give. They like to give. They're not stingy. And because they like to give, that's why they're Klesha, Saha. That's why they'll take troubles. They'll inconvenience themselves. For the sake of people that they love. And then this word chami is also important. Chami. My grandmother used to call my wife Shami. Mispronouncing her name, but it was in a cute way. Forgiving, Shami, also means patient and understanding. So this is weird. Because the myth of Taurus is, well, like some people say stubborn. So you can see stubborn. You can see what we were talking about that before. They are madhyanta sokya. They're fixed on the end, so they don't vacillate easily. They don't move off the course easily, so you can't move them easily. They stick to their thing. And if your intention is to move them, then that's going to feel like negative to you. Like, this person's stubborn, I can't move them. But if you're the person who's they're attached to, it feels good. But there's another. That's not a myth, so that's an accurate thing about Taurus. But the myth thing about Taurus is anger, bad temper. This is just, I think, one of the myths that popped up over the years. And I believe that it actually has more to do with coincidental things. So for example, you may have a particular sample of 100 people with a prominent Taurus for some reason or another, Taurus moon, Taurus sun, Taurus ascendant, who might have anger issues. But maybe it's because they have Rahu conjoined Mars right on the cusp of their 7th house. There's other things that are happening besides just what is happening in Taurus. And another thing is, depending on the nakshatra is a whole nother way of dividing up the sign, and the two overlap. So it might be in a nakshatra which is heatable and can get angry. But I don't believe that you will be serving your knowledge of astrology well, or your practice of astrology well, if you continue to embrace that concept that Taurus gets angry. However, because it's Madhyanta Sokya, whatever it's feeling will last for a long time. Like stubborn is accurate, but angry is not. But that means that if the Taurus person gets angry, it's not easy to calm them down. Like, it's quite different from Gemini, which is constantly changing. And so, therefore, everything has its pros and cons. Taurus is great if you're the person receiving the affection and it's affection. But Taurus is awful if you're not the person receiving affection and you want to be. Or if you're the person receiving the anger. Because Taurus keeps doing what it's doing, keeps feeling what it's feeling. So that may also be the origin of the myth. It's not really that Taurus becomes angry easy, but Taurus's emotions are strong and last a long time. So actually Taurus is quite tolerant, like a bull. Bulls tolerate a lot. They do a lot of work. They carry a lot of weight. So Taurus, Kshami, they tolerate a lot because they love people. Alf wants to know how I would interpret the difference between Taurus, Sun, or Rising. It's not much different, but it's just the particular point in there. Like Taurus Ascendant has a lot of impact on the physical body because it's the Ascendant. With the Sun, it doesn't have as much. Yeah, Teeny said. Samurai suggests maybe the anger because there's a little bit of Tamasic in Taurus. I don't think it's good for you to think that Taurus is angry. Just realize that Taurus is emotional. Taurus is emotional, and one emotion is anger. But just as one emotion is anger, whatever emotion Taurus gets, it keeps for a while, and it feels it strong. So if it happens to be anger, you're going to think, Jesus, Taurus person is freaking pissed. Mick wants to know if there's a special connection between Cancer and Taurus people. Cancer and Taurus are separated by 2, so it's just friendly. But he says, but the moon is exalted in Taurus. So yeah, that's an interesting point. Thank you, Esme. Good, Gloria. I like that comment. Okay, let's continue with this. So the next thing, where are we up to? I like to get back to some Sanskrit sometimes. Prituru Vaktra. Do you remember what that meant? Prituru Vaktra, big hips, round face. Krishikarma Kritsyan. Do you remember? That was agriculture. Madhyanta Sokya. I think you remember that. Happy in the middle and end. Pramada Priyascha. They have strong feelings. And they like strong feelings. They like love. Syagi Kshami Klesha Sahas. They're generous, they're tolerant, and they take troubles for people. And Goman, they got cows. Cows is the same as money. Prituru Vaktra Krishikarma Kritsyan Madhyanta Sokya Pramada Priyascha Sagi Kshami Klesha Sahascha Goman. So, what can we say about Goman? It's kind of one of those things like, well, that's pretty obvious. This is the sign signified by the cow, the bull, and the people are Goman, they have a cow. So, but like, again, that's just getting stuck. How many people have cows? How like if you were born in India 2,000 years ago, you probably would have 50 cows. But today, you're born in New York in 1980, you probably have 4 watches and 2 cars. It's basically the same thing. That's what it means. Gomang means you have the means of producing all the things that you need. You have all the things that you want. So expect Taurus natives to have good stuff and to appreciate good stuff. Yeah. And you can also go a little bit with the literal meaning of Goman, which means they have a cow. The literal meaning of it means they like animals. So they look at the people they love. So they take care of plants and animals too. They don't have like a small sense of love. It's not just me. It's not even just my family. It's not even just my species. They love everything. They're loving. So if you want to go stick with the literal meaning of have a cow, then expect in the modern world, they're animal lovers, they have pets, stuff like that. If you want to go, you don't need to stick with the literal meaning of it though, because the more important meaning of it is they have money and they have good stuff. Maybe they're not a billionaire, but the 3 things that they have are quality. They took care of them and they picked the right ones. And then the last thing was beauty marks. Prishtasya Pashverimka Yuta. So what's beauty marks is weird. Like there's marks in your skin, which is not supposed to be beautiful. Your skin is supposed to be smooth and clean. But for some reason it's beautiful. So probably, here's what I write here. Probably these acquired the name beauty marks because they usually appear on beautiful people, since Taurus indicates both beauty and these marks. Okay. So remember, Taurus is Prituru Vaktra. You have a beautiful body. And you have marks on that body, like moles, dots, freckles. And so the reason why these come to be associated with beauty is because they're usually on beautiful people, because they both come from Taurus. Why they come from Taurus, I really can't say. I don't know. Maybe there's some way to figure out. Excessive kapha might produce that. I'm not sure. All right, let me see if there's any questions to address. Enema de Loop. Does Venus and Mercury have common ground because Mercury's appreciation for symmetry? Well, yeah, Mercury is extremely beautiful. Also. They're also friends. They're also very close in the sky. Can planets in Taurus, Scorpio axis signify addictions? Not inherently. First of all, what is a Taurus, Scorpio axis? You mean on the cusp of the ascendant in Taurus? I don't know what that means. Or do you mean that they're forming oppositions between Taurus and Scorpio? If you're forming oppositions between Taurus and Scorpio, then you can have a clash between materialism, spiritualism. But I really wouldn't go anywhere into the realm of interpreting addiction. Right, you said addiction? Unless you're dealing closely with Rahu and Ketu. you really need to put Rahu and Ketu into the picture, and then you can talk about addictions. But because without Rahu and Ketu, nothing is addictive. Samurai says, I feel like beauty marks are like constellations in our skin. That's very interesting. Crystal is covered in freckles. She's a Taurus ascendant. Dun, 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 Mukund Bhatia says, large body features seems a relation to Jupiter too. Sure, especially Pisces. Just because Taurus has something doesn't mean that no other rising sign has it. All right. Good. I hope you enjoyed Taurus. Pritu. Alf says, every time you say Pritu, I smile and think of moving mountains and forging rivers. Good, mountains. Okay, thank you, everybody. I'll see you in 2 days for the Bhagavatam stream. And we survived the typhoon without losing power. Good job.